the long-term plan to me is building New Lebanon. I think there's been a lot of work. I understand I wasn't a part of it, but I know there's been a lot of work by the school board, by the building committees, pre-feasibility studies, many different studies, figuring out the perfect size. Megan and I were lucky enough to visit the school the other day. They are over capacity, and that is with 70 kids who want to go there, that are in that neighborhood, aren't able to go there. They haven't had a kindergarten for 4 years. We went to visit where the kindergarten was. That was, I don't want to use the word depressing, but a little sad. And, and of course, they also have a preschool. I think that it's been a very well thought out plan that was planned with the state. I was excited to see that the Board of Ed decided to push it and ask the RTM to bring it to the BET. I look forward to that vote. I hope they make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Arbach.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the League of Voters. Thank you to the Neighborhood Association for having us this evening. I'm very happy to be here with you. The theme behind my campaign is that our kids deserve better. And the fact is that the children of the New Lebanon School absolutely deserve better. I absolutely support a new Lebanon. I think it is a travesty that Governor Malloy has gone out way above and beyond to say that he does not want to fund a school for our children. I think that is absolutely tragic. Well, the other thing that I think is tragic is that the Board of Education never made any contingency plans. Now, the Board of Education and the Building Committee came to the RTM and to the taxpayers of Greenwich, and they said very clearly that we are not going to put a shovel in the ground until we receive our state funding. That is what was promised, and that is what should be delivered. That does not mean that I'm against a new Lebanon, because I am absolutely for a new Lebanon. But I'm in the business world, and I'm doing my 2018 business planning these days. And we talk about ways to improve sales performance, and we come up with contingency plans if our original plans don't work. 2 weeks ago, at the Board of Education, one of my opponents stated that we just need to move ahead regardless of what the state does. And another member of the Board of Education stated very publicly, because Chairperson Schur asked a great question, what happens if we don't get the money? They said we don't have a backup plan. Okay. Well, you know what? Our children deserve a backup plan.
Arbach.
Our children deserve better.
Thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
There we go. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, now it's on. I want to thank the Byram and Chickahominy Neighborhood Associations, the League of Women Voters for putting this on, everybody for coming out tonight. The question was on the position on the racial balance plan first, and then talk about New Leb. There's 5 parts of the racial balance plan, the 2 that really matter that we should be talking about. One is about student achievement for all students across the entire district. That's not just about New Leb or the western end of town. That actually affects all of our students. To me, that was the meat of the plan, of the actual plan. I'm not a fan of the racial balance law. It's a bad law. It's got bad history, and hopefully someday the state will fix that. But we should be focusing on achievement. We need to continue that work. That's a big part of the racial balance plan. As for New Leb, make no mistake, this is a building we need. This is a building the town needs, all of our kids need. The money was appropriated by the RTM without condition. They have appropriated the full amount. This isn't an additional tax on people, and nobody's giving up on the state grant. We're seeking an 80% reimbursement from the state under a law that has no discretion for the governor to withhold money from us. This is money that we should be getting back. Whether that comes through legislation or some other method, we'll have to find out. As for the no contingency plan, you're right. We're building the building that we need. This is the building we need regardless of the racial balance plan. We need 3 classrooms per grade level. We need common space that is adequate to the size of the school. It is the standard that was used to build Glenville. Why do we have a different standard for New Lebanon School?
Thank you. Ms. Olson?
So I'm in the education world, and in 15 years of educational experience in towns much like Greenwich, Connecticut, I have never seen a school with such overcrowding issues as I saw in New Lebanon. As Ms. Stowe mentioned, I took a walk there the other day. I actually walked down the hill to where the kindergartners are learning in a basement in one class in a room without windows. It's hard to learn about a unit on weather when you can't open the window and see outside what the weather is. We've done other things in this town. We've built a fire station, we've built police stations, we've rebuilt things that need to be built because we need to serve our community. We are now putting up fancy wooden signs in mid-country Greenwich. We need to build schools. People don't come to Greenwich because of the wooden signs in mid-country Greenwich. People move to Greenwich because of the schools, and the schools first. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I put education first, and I will continue to do so. It's particularly unacceptable in Western Greenwich, where we have an achievement gap. The preschool was taken away because of space issues and overcrowding 6 years ago from New Lebanon, in a school where, in a neighborhood where we could benefit from preschool. I believe in expanding preschool in Western Greenwich. I walked there. I also saw that there were no acceptable fields for students on which to play. There were 2 giant rocks, and I asked, where do the students play kickball? And where do the students play soccer? And they said, on the rocks, next to a small playground. It is necessary, needs to be done.
Thank you very much. Mr. Scher.
Can you repeat the question? I think there were multiple parts to it.
Okay, well, please tell us your position on Greenwich's racial balance plan. Specifically, your thoughts on the Board of Education approved educational program / size of the New Lebanon School. And do you have a long-term goal to help us solve the racial imbalance?
Racial balance problem, right. I think my views are pretty well known about racial balance. I think it's outrageous that in 2017, we're talking about categorizing children by race, and we're talking about assigning kids to school by race. I just find that personally deeply offensive. As I said last night, my wife and I have been trying very hard to raise our 3 children so that they're not focused on the color of anyone's skin or where they come from. With that said, we have this really officious law that comes from the state of Connecticut that we, unfortunately, on the board need to try to comply with. I was instrumental in really driving the racial balance plan away from forced busing into neighborhood schools and into a place where we have choice. I'm very proud of that record, of having that impact on the plan. In terms of New Lebanon, I voted for the plan. I've always supported getting a New Lebanon. The problem that we've created, though, is we've mixed up the needs of the local neighborhood with the racial balance plan. And we have to recognize that by attaching ourselves to the state, we're now 5 years into this, and the school kids are not even in a new school. We shouldn't have done that, but now given where we are, our only chance is to get this $23 million from the state. I pray every day that it gets passed, because it's the only plan that the Board of Education has developed to get a new school for New Lebanon. We're sitting in a beautiful building here at Hamilton Avenue, and we need to get further along with our STEM part of that program.
Mr. Scher, thank you very much. A rebuttal, would anybody like to add something? All right, we'll go down the line. Anybody who wants to speak? 30 seconds.
Thank you. Like I said, it's important for the racial balance plan, but beyond that, it's important for our community. So we have to build it. It should be up to the standards of the rest of Greenwich, frankly. And I'm a financial person. I haven't had a chance to talk about that yet, but we've met the requirements. So let's do it. I'm confident that the state will come, but we can build it. We're Greenwich. It's only become more expensive if we delay it. So let's start getting the shovels in the ground, and let's do it now. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Arbach, I'm sure.
We sent 3 different racial balance plans to the state of Connecticut. I agree with Mr. Scher. I'm done with racial balance because that's not how our town and our children are acting, our parents are acting today. The school that is being proposed is 64% bigger than the existing structure, which is wonderful if the state gives us the $23 million. Ms. Stowe, I respectfully disagree. You can be confident that I am not prepared to make a $23 million bet for Greenwich taxpayers on building a school. We will deliver a New Lebanon in a fiscally responsible way.
All right, thank you. Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you. Plan B, by the way, according to the state, because you can see what they've been doing to Fairfield, is redistricting and busing, which comes with a huge cost. Homeowners lose their value. Buses, $90,000 for each of those yellow limousines we have. As for being 64% bigger, New Lebanon, smallest in terms of common area space. It is. Go look. You can see it in the building, okay? We are bringing it to the Glenville standard. Are we saying that New Lebanon does not deserve the same size building that we give other kids in the district? Is that really the message we want to send?
Thank you, Ms. Olson.
Every single student, all 9,002 in this district, deserve the same opportunities, no matter what your zip code, no matter where you live in this town. As somebody who grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, and having been in education and living here, I've never met one single parent who has ever been in favor of moving their kids cross town and redistricting and going the route of busing. This building needs to be built. It's been designed to fit the needs of our students. That is our goal as a Board of Education, is to fit the needs of every student.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, do you wish to add anything?
Not a lot. I hope we get that $23 million because, as Mr. Bernstein
Don't we all?
pointed out, actually it was said at a board meeting the other day, the board and the building committee have no plan B. And I would hate us to go burn up another couple years of nothing but confrontation with the state and confrontation with the rest of the town. That's not the way to get anything done. As I say, we're attached to this plan. The plan is the plan. I hope we get the money and we can build the school.
Okay, thank you. Before we get to the second question, which is a little bit of a follow-up, I would like to remind the audience that we would very much like for you to ask questions of the candidates. We have cards, we have pencils. Please write your question. They will be picked up. Would you raise your arm and tell everybody? And we would like to intersperse the questions from the live audience, if you will, with the questions that came from the various neighborhood associations and the PTAs. I said there was a follow-up question, and I think it'll go to Mr. Arbach first. The question is, if the state of Connecticut does not provide the reimbursement for the New Lebanon school, do you support the possibility of forced redistricting and busing of all of our elementary school students, as the state of Connecticut is currently doing in Fairfield? 90 seconds.
If the state does not provide the money, then I do not support forced redistricting. 4 to 5 years ago, this debate came to this town, and the parents stood up to many members of the Board of Education who supported redistricting. And I still stand with those parents, and I will not stand for redistricting, forced redistricting, in the town of Greenwich, Connecticut. We are a town that is about neighborhood schools. Go to any school, New Lebanon, Hamilton Avenue, Julian Curtis, Glenville, Riverside, Old Greenwich, Dundee, North Miami, Coscob, these elementary schools. They all love their neighborhood schools, and that's not going to change. Unfortunately, the Board of Education has a responsibility to its 9,000 students, its 1,400 staff members, its 60,000 residents in this town. And when they don't have a backup plan to build a new school, well, they've let down the children in Byram. The Board of Education, by not thinking ahead, by not having members who are willing to ask the hard questions, as a member of the Board of Education, I know that our kids deserve better. I will ask those hard questions. I will make sure that we have contingency plans. I will make sure that we are prepared. And gosh darn it, we are going to stand for neighborhood schools today, tomorrow, forever.
Thank you very much. Mr. Bernstein.
Thank you. No, I certainly don't support forced busing. A couple years ago, as part of our FERB process, looking at racial balance, we polled the parents. Nobody wants to move their kids. We do support neighborhood schools, right? So we came up with a plan focusing on achievement, focusing on some of the magnet programs, including the one here, and focusing on the rebuilding of New Lebanon School. I don't know a single board member during that debate that actually supported redistricting. And what we did learn was the consultant looked at it and said, even if you move 900 kids across the district, which I don't support, let's be clear, and bus them across the district, that's all kids, not just kids from the western end out. It's kids all around the district. If you move 900 kids, 10% of your population, within 2 years you'd be in the same place. That's just insanity, folks. That would be crazy. So every 2 years, you'd be shuffling the deck. It makes no sense to me. As for no backup plan, that's not true. I am telling you right now, the building committee has looked at this, the Board of Ed has looked at this. We would be building a building that is the same size as the building we're building today, that we're planning to build now. If you look at the educational specifications, it has 3 classrooms per grade level, like other elementary schools. The common spaces are like our elementary schools. The community room was actually stripped out of it, believe it or not, already taken away. We had one here once, it's gone now too, because we use it as a classroom. We tend to build buildings to the size of the population that's in the building, and it's a mistake. There are kids moving into the western end of town, there's a lot of construction going on there, and we need to plan for that eventuality.
Thank you very much. Ms. Olson?
If the state does not provide the money, then quite frankly, we need to figure it out. This is not something that we can just rely on the state and discuss over and over again. When I walked into New Lebanon School, they had on the wall the plan, the blueprints, coming soon. And actually, Barbara, the principal, had to actually take down the chart paper and put it up because it faded, because actually the sign faded. It's been 4 years on that wall. What message is that to prospective parents coming to Western Greenwich that want to attend New Lebanon? I mentioned earlier, I stated my position on forced redistricting and busing. I have never met a single parent in favor of it. I don't think that is the solution. I absolutely do not think that is the solution. This is a well-developed plan. This is not an extravagant plan. It meets the needs of the students. Again, when I walked in there, I saw students learning, and some students, the L's, the English language learners, one classroom was about the size of a closet. That's unacceptable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
You're quite, let me just remind you of the question. The question was,
The question was
forced redistricting.
forced redistricting a la Fairfield County, if there is no state funding.
Yeah. I've always stood against that plan. I was one of the few people on the board when we took this up. A lot of people here who were here I was probably the only person who was on the board when we actually discussed this. In fact, there were 6 board members who were pushing a plan to essentially bus between 500 and 1,000 kids around the district. Now, they were going to do it on a voluntary basis, but it was busing nonetheless. I was also the person with Peter Von Braun that pushed very hard to go out and survey thousands of parents in the district to find out what they want. Guess what? It's the same in Riverside and North Miami as it is in Byram and Chickahominy. What parents want is the same. They want a solid neighborhood school, and very few people will send their kids somewhere else in the district. I will not redistrict to achieve racial balance. I want to say that again. As long as I'm on the board, I will not vote to redistrict to achieve racial balance. When I was on, this is the plan, by the way, for this school from 2007. We've been at this a very, very long time. If we don't get the school at New Lebanon the way we expect to, I think it's time to say goodbye to the state. Let them come to us aggressively on the state law. We have been advised as a board by attorneys that the state law is probably unconstitutional. I think we should let the challenge happen and find out if that's true.
Thank you. Ms. Stone?
Yes, I think we heard loud and clear 4 years ago that people value their neighborhood schools. That part is true. People move to Riverside and Old Greenwich because they want to walk to school. I guess I chose Parkway because I wanted to drive 45 minutes to get milk or something like that. But seriously, you choose your school because it's what attracted you to the neighborhood. I believe that the state, I am hopeful the state is going to come through. It's obviously a part of the bond package. It would be strange for them to pull out individual items from the bond package. However, at a minimum, projects of this sort do get reimbursed. So there will be 20% that would come back to us at a minimum. But I am hopeful that we are going to get the full reimbursement. It's a part of the bond package, and we just have to wait for, I really would hope that Connecticut passes a budget soon. I also just want to say, as a financial person, it's frankly a good time to be working on your infrastructure. We have relatively low borrowing costs right now, so it's a pretty good time to be floating a bond. Thank you.
Okay, will anybody like to add something? Okay, Mr. Auerbach, your turn. 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. Again, I support a New Lebanon. Anyone who says otherwise is just, it's malarkey. Peter Bernstein, you said that the building specifications would be exactly the same. We build the same school. Well, that's because you told the building committee to provide a building with an 80% reimbursement rate from the state of Connecticut. The fact of the matter is you're building a 21 classroom school, and whether it's 21 classrooms or 16 or 17 new classrooms, we need a New Lebanon, but you need a fiscally responsible one. Our kids deserve better.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Bernstein, yes.
Yeah, so I actually was on the board when we voted on the racial balance plan, and I was the one pushing on achievement very, very hard. As for the reimbursement rate, that doesn't drive the size of the building. The needs of the student population drives the size of the building. Let's be very clear on that. And there's no bond here, there's no additional tax. This money is set aside by the town in a cash fund. We have the money to do this. What we are waiting on, and let's not be mistaken, we are waiting on the state on whether or not we get our grant and when we get that grant. That's it, end of story. Greenwich has the money.
Thank you, Ms. Olson. Yes? Okay, you're passing. Mr. Sherry, you wish to add something?
Yeah, I just,
By all means.
let's make sure the facts are flying. The school right now has 260 kids in the school at New Lebanon. If you take our education spec, which you can all go see it online at the Board of Education, the building will now be sized for a maximum capacity of 475 students. 475 is a lot bigger than 260. 260 is obviously too small, but I don't know if 475 is actually the right number. That's the size of Riverside.
Okay. Ms. Stone, do you wish to add anything?
Yes, just on that. It's correct, it's 260, however, I did look at the projections, they expect it to be growing. Additionally, there are 70 kids that are from that neighborhood that have been forced to go other places. There's no kindergarten and there's no preschool. Plus, you want to bring 50 magnet seats to actually bring people to that area, and we're hopeful that more people will actually move to that neighborhood, as there are some really great arts. It's close to the train station, you have a new rec center, so I actually think it was very well thought out and well sized.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll leave that for the moment. This question